Not too many people are laughing at preppers these days. Used to be in the days of Y2K that people who believed the end was near were ridiculed, and people who stored up food were kind of scoffed at. And a lot of people these days even will say that, when the people who advocate for being prepared say, hey, I think something bad is coming. They say, everyone was saying that during Y2K and that whole big scare. Nothing ever came of that. It's just another version of that. No, it isn't. This is very different from Y2K because we have evidence of things. We're seeing things happen. It's not just conjecture like, hey, this might happen at the turn of the millennium. There might be this huge crash. We're actually seeing before us unprecedented things. So not similar at all. But not too many people are laughing now, even people who would have before, because I think that there are so many um, people who feel in their spirit that something is coming. And a lot of people have an inclination to be prepared, whereas previously they really wouldn't have. When you look into these prepper communities, there's a lot of know-it-alls. There's a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, you think you're just gonna get some rice and then go into the woods and live? You'll only make it a month and blah blah blah. You need to be a trained survivalist to make this happen. You need to be a Navy SEAL, otherwise you're done for." And this is nonsense because homeless people have been doing this for ages, living in tents in the woods and surviving just fine, scavenging and doing that successfully. There was a guy I think he was a convict on the run in Wisconsin, dug a hole in the side of a hill basically, and dragged some stuff in there to kind of make it more comfortable. He lived that way for 3 years, and the only reason that ever stopped is because a couple of, I think, hunters stumbled upon him and reported him. So, and this has been done in history too. Um, Watch the movie Defiance. That's a true story. People running from the Germans hightailed it to the woods and essentially started their own community. The thing we have to watch for, though, is technology is different now. So, do you have to be a survivalist? Do you have to be a Navy SEAL? No. Just about anybody with the will to live can do it. So, the technology piece, I think, when you look at a lot of globalist documents, they they have a strong focus on technological ingenuity and using that to benefit their aims. A big part of that is drone surveillance, and so you almost have to anticipate being surveilled from above. And I would imagine that technology that can take heat signatures from quite a ways uh, would would come into play, and there are remedies for that too. But sometimes when I have heard people talk about how it would be a good idea to begin prepping because something bad is coming, um, I've heard some. Now this was in relation to, there was a, I don't know if you remember Dana Coverstone. He was making these predictions and telling people to prepare and stuff like that. And he got some criticism from Christians who I think in the end turned out to be correct about, like, don't put too much stock into what Coverstone is saying, because he made very specific predictions about specific months, like here's what's going to happen then, and that stuff didn't really turn out happening. But amongst those critiques was, well, Coverstone is promoting storing up food, and that's antithetical to the Bible because inherently that is self-preservation, and as Christians, you're supposed to focus on servitude. And I take issue with that line of thought because take two people in this kind of a scenario. One has stored up all kinds of food and other provisions, and one has done nothing because to do so would be selfish. Now, in a scenario where everything comes crashing down, who is this person going to help? Absolutely nobody, because he has nothing, because he did nothing, because he didn't prepare. Who can this person help? Um, all kinds of people, because he's got a crap ton of food and a crap ton of supplies, and he can help people out, even though he is being selfish by preparing. That doesn't make any sense. Furthermore, um, in the Old Testament, God himself told Joseph to store up grains because there was a famine coming. Joseph did that and rose to a place of prominence because he helped preserve Egypt through a famine. On that note, interesting to note, there's a number of people who believe that the historical Joseph is the same as the historical Imhotep, because Imhotep, I believe, was uh, he was not Egyptian. He came to a point of leadership direct, like number two under Pharaoh as a foreigner. And Imhotep, that's Joseph's story. If you know Joseph, that whole story, that's his story as well. And both of those individuals were around during the same time. So we have information we have from archaeological inscriptions and ancient historians saying this is we know about Imhotep because of that, and it mirrors the biblical Joseph. But anyway, that's just a side topic. Um, about about running for the hills, bugging out, as the preppers would call it. Jesus said that when you see the abomination of desolation in the holy place, if you're in Judea, you run to the mountains. Don't stop for anything, just go, just run. Um, so he seemed to advocate for it, and certainly his message was to be prepared more for the coming of, well, his second coming. But it doesn't seem to me to be anti biblical to focus on being prepared. In fact, that just seems smart to me. So, like I said, what do you prepare for? Well, I don't know that anybody really knows super well. Um, like I said, there are a number of scenarios. You can bug out. Do you do that? Do you run for the wilderness and try to see what you can do from there, or do you bug in? Do you hunker down and stay put in your own home? I mean, it depends on the scenario. I think that looking at a lot of these globalist documents and what they have planned, they do have they do have a plan for complete technocratic control, and it's going to be very technology focused. And they are going to use global surveillance and global tracking. Um, to me, I think a safe bet would be to go off grid. And people have lived without electricity for ages, so you don't need. There's a lot of focus on. Well, I'll get some solar panels so I can charge stuff and watch my TV. And I mean, if you're talking survival, I'd forget about all that. You're fine without gadgets. So just because we've become accustomed to having gadgets for so long, don't think that that has to be a necessary part of any plan to keep yourself safe if you are in a bug out scenario. Um, but if there is something like drone surveillance, which I believe, according to them, there will be, um, my thought is this, and there's a number of different things, but I would try to dig about 4 feet in the ground, provided the water table isn't too high, something like that, and then just kind of have a peek over that, so you have a half buried house, uh, provided it is sturdy enough um, to support a layer of sod over the top, so that if there was any kind of technology to take a heat signature from above, that would probably prevent it. Um, what's your latitude? Are you going to be facing? You live where I live, and you're going to be looking at like 20 below winters, or worse. If you're farther north, probably invest in a heat stove or a wood stove and factor that into it. Um, do you bug out? Do you bug in? I don't know. Are there Chinese boots on the ground? Are there blue helmets? UN people running around with machine guns? I have no idea what it's going to look like. Um, you might be better off finding a room in a corner of your house that it's hard to tell from the outside the layout of your home, and removing the door frame and putting up drywall and creating a hidden room. Maybe that's the best bet. But what you should do is focus on making sure that the basics are provided for. Obviously, food, shelter, water, um, heat if you're somewhere cold in the winter. As far as food goes, you can increase the shelf life of dried goods significantly um, by putting them in a, let's take rice for example. Around here we have Sam's Clubs, and pretty sure, if I remember right, you can get a 50-pound bag of rice for under $20. Now, that in itself has a long shelf life, but take that bag of rice home, dump it in a Mylar bag, throw some oxygen absorbers in there, and seal it up, and now you've got rice that's going to be good 30 years from now. Um, the Mylar bag prevents oxidation. Mylar is not porous, whereas if you put it in a plastic bag and sealed it up, I mean, you can put a bunch of water in a Ziploc bag, seal it up, and the water's not going anywhere. So you think, oh, that's airtight. Well, it's watertight, but there are tiny little holes in plastic that oxygen gets through. So if you want to preserve something, plastic bag isn't going to do. It's not going to work. Um, get a Mylar bag, and you can find that. Not that I want to give Amazon any more money, but find that on Amazon. You can find oxygen absorbers on Amazon and toss a couple of those in, and know the ratios too of what I would do. Oxygen absorbers are not very expensive. Just whatever it says for per like how many cc's of oxygen you need to absorb. Just double it or triple it, toss it in there. Um, so now you've got your rice in a Mylar bag. The oxygen absorbers you've dropped in there. You can take just a um, hair straightener, or probably even a curling iron. Hair straightener probably works better because it's more flat. And then you have the edges of the bag together, and the hair straightener just seal it, and that should make an airtight seal. Oxygen absorbers will remove any oxygen. You hear talk of there being bugs left behind because in rice you're going to have little eggs. There's these little, what are they called? Anyway, little bugs that tend to hang out in rice. So a lot of people will freeze their rice before they seal it up. If you've got oxygen absorbers in there, it will, nothing's going to live. So that'll take care of that. You wouldn't need to freeze your food before you seal it up. Remember, just do dried goods, rice or beans, or beans have more protein, so that's good. Rice, you get more bang for your buck. Um, the Mylar, though, is good to prevent oxidation. You, depending on where you keep this stuff, mice or pests can still chew through that. So a lot of people who have done this said they had it. They had this whole storage system. All their stuff was sealed up, and the mice got to it, chewed holes in it, and ruined it. Um, so what a lot of people suggest is find a like just a tin trash can or something metal that they can't chew through after you seal up your rice in oxygen or your beans or whatever in Mylar and with oxygen absorbers. Then you put those sealed bags in a garbage or a metal container of some kind that can't be chewed through. And then you're good. You know what? This all might be just a bunch of fear mongering and people are afraid for nothing and everything's going to be okay. And and maybe it will for 10 years before it gets bad, maybe 20 years. But that's called insurance. That's what you do when you buy insurance. You're trying to insurance. It inherently is just preparation. So if you can do something like that and invest in, okay, so now I've got enough food to keep me alive for a year or two, and just in case something goes bad within the next 30 years, that's 30 years of some additional security. To me, worth it. I mean, if you're buying insurance for other stuff, you think you'd want to insure your very life. Um, you know what? Maybe they're going to nuke us all, and this isn't going to matter anyway. We'll just go up in a radioactive plume of smoke. I don't know, but um, anyway, so that's what you can do for food. One thing you can do for food. Water filtration is the next thing. Obviously, um, you can stay alive for you. I mean, you can go without eating for a couple weeks and be fine. You're not going to die. Water you need more frequently. So really, now especially if you operate on a biblical paradigm, according to Revelation, when wormwood hits, and wormwood sounds like an asteroid, that's going to pollute, leave a third of the pure water on the planet. So there wouldn't be a lot of fresh water to work with. Um, I would invest in a gravity filter, something like a Berkey or Aquapure or something like that. Also, I would say support anti-globalist causes. You can get some of these items from, say, like the InfoWars store. Go to InfoWarsStore.com and get it from there. That way, you're investing in your future, and you're also helping to fund really one of the last big efforts against globalism. Um, a mini Sawyer that's a lot cheaper, but it's portable. But it's said to be able to filter up to I don't know, like 100,000 gallons or something like that. There's no reason you'd need anything more than that, except for it's probably not as durable as a gravity filter, which those can be spendy. You could, look at like $350 for one of those. You can get cheap ones too. The filters themselves, oftentimes, you can just clean your. They should last a long time. I would get an extra one just in case, but also, pool shock is apparently something that can help purify water and eradicate. Cryptosporidium is the really small little bugs that some filters have a difficult time getting. You can actually even get filters that filter radiation. But I guess, in my way of thinking, and those of you that are a little bit more knowledgeable in this area, you can feel free to correct me in comments. But I would purify any toxic water. Toxic or not, I mean, you don't really know if it's toxic right out the gate, probably, but purify it with some pool shock. Now, I think you're supposed to get the stuff without algicide in it, but which also, by the way, pool shock has a long shelf life, as I hear, provided you store it properly, Um, but that you can hang on to for a while. Put that in your stores as well. Um, but you could shock the water and get rid of the cryptosporidium or anything else that could potentially be lethal or damaging, and then filter it through a mini Sawyer or a gravity filter. Now, if you have a problem with you don't want to drink chlorine water, I get that. It should be safe, but you can aerate it by just taking it from one cup and dumping it back and forth, which I hear, and I don't know from experience, but I hear helps aerate it to kind of get rid of that chlorine taste, which I'm sure won't go away completely. Now, as far as providing your own food, renewable food, by the way, in a lot of these globalist documents, actually, even some old ones, people have been arrested for gardening because that's illegal. It, it had been in certain areas at certain times. I would expect more of that because now they're using climate change as a front for that. You growing plants produces a carbon footprint. So you're hurting the planet by growing plants. It is the most asinine thing you could ever think of, but that's what they're saying. So I would expect, if you're having any idea of just having a garden in your backyard or something like that, I wouldn't count on it. What you could do is what's referred to as guerrilla gardening, and don't make them rectangular plots. Have some uh, amorphous looking kind of kind of plots. Make them look natural and just kind of spread them. Obviously, this is only going to work if you have a place out in the middle of nowhere. Um, Plot them so that it doesn't look like it's man-made. They just look like natural little growths of whatever. And unless somebody is up close and personal looking right at it directly, they're not going to have any clue that is planted by people. Farming, I don't know how much you can get away with while flying under the radar. Chickens are pretty easy. Maybe invest in those. I would get a fishing pole and some supplies. Um, are guns going to be illegal? I would count on it. So, are you going to hunt big game? Are you going to shoot deer and survive that way? Um, to me, guns are loud. If you shoot a gun, you're sending off an alarm saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm a rule breaker. I'm a dissident, and here's where I am. Come find me, kill me, rape my wife, and sell my children into slavery." So, if you don't want that to happen, I would suggest getting a crossbow because they are silent, and that's something you could use for larger game. A pellet gun will help you take care. I mean, you can kill raccoons and possums and birds and um, all kinds of things with a pellet gun. And pellet gun, as expensive as ammo is now, that's going to be a lot cheaper, and it's not going to be loud. So you can uh, probably it could be the case that a lot of the big game is going to be hunted out quickly, and so you might have a better chance with small game anyway, just kind of plinking some birds out of trees. So don't forget, it's silence may be very useful. Crossbows and pellet guns are quiet. If you're trying to stay warm, wool clothes are good. Cotton does not uh, repel um, moisture very well. Uh, Cotton or wool has more moisture wicking properties, so and it keeps you warmer. So wool clothing would be good for harsh winters. Um, a wood stove would be fantastic, and I would just going along the same notes of what I've been talking about before, as far as you don't need to be a survivalist, you don't need to be a Navy SEAL. Probably your chances are going to be better. No, probably about it actually, but your chances are going to be better off if you have a whole community of people with a diverse array of knowledge and abilities and skills. However, do your best on your own too. Bring some how-to books. If you don't know how to garden, like I don't, have some how-to books. If you don't know how to skin a deer, have some how-to books. I would recommend getting some stuff on small gas engines. Are you a mechanic? Not me. Well, I don't know how to fix that stuff. But you can figure things out pretty well if you have some guides like that. You don't have the books, then I don't know, print stuff off the internet. That's what I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of that, and a lot of good information out there that can point you in the right direction. How to dig a root cellar. You're going to want to preserve any food you have. Um, no, you don't have to be an expert, but if you can throw some helpful information in useful books like that, survival guides and things like that, into your whether it's a bug out tote or what, or if you're hunkering down inside your home, um, that stuff can be invaluable, especially considering that there are murmurings of a big cyber crash. So you're not always going to have the internet to refer to for help. Are not likely anyway. What do you do if you need to find a remote area to hunker down in? I would get a cheap, crappy RV. Well, depending on what you can afford. But you could get an RV or something like that, or a fifth wheel if you've got a truck to haul it, plunge it into the woods somewhere, and you can live right out of that. Um, there's a number of things you can do based on what scenario we are going to be facing. So those are some suggestions, but there has also been a lot of talk of climate lockdowns, part of that being setting up checkpoints on highways and roads. If you've got a bug out location that's 3 hours away, you might not be able to make it there. Um, I think that historically, the infrastructure has been taken control of. These aren't, as a evil psychotic globalist, that's all they do is think about how to control people all day, and people's psychology and how they respond to things. And if we do this, then what are they going to do? And how do we counter it? And um, they're not dumb. They're going to have thought about a number of contingencies, and travel might not be an option, just something for you to consider. So if you have any building know-how, or you can find a way to put a false room in your home, or a hidden area, something like that, that might be worth doing. And then BlackRock will come along and buy up your home, and I don't know. Again, this is all speculation stuff. So I'm not saying this is what we'll be encountering, and this is exactly what you're going to have to do. I've got no idea. But you need to think about it so that when contingency A happens, you do this. If contingency B happens, well, I'm going to do that. If contingency C happens, here's how I'll respond to it. And in doing so, that will just kind of give you your best chances. In the end, you're going to die anyway. Whether or not I don't say that to be discouraging. It's just because sometimes this stuff can be anxiety provoking, and you have to. It's good to come to terms with your mortality anyway. Whether or not the globalists win and humanity is enslaved, you're going to die. If the globalists are defeated and we have a golden age of success, you're going to die. It doesn't matter. But I think it's worth trying to preserve your life and do God's work while you can. And so these are some things I think to bear in mind. Oh, I was going to read from this too. Um, Signs of the End of the Age, Matthew 24, just for some nice little insights. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall be not left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. That's just the beginning of sorrows. And then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And we see that taking place. That's been taking place for a while, kind of subtly, but it's going to ramp up once they push transhumanism, because the Christian contingent of the populace is going to reject that wholeheartedly. And that's going to be interpreted as Christianity is hindering the evolution of mankind. We could live for 250 years because the scientists have found a way to increase the length of the telomeres, which dictates the lifespan of an organism. And the Christians are saying no. So we got to kill them because they're interfering with our rise to godhood, so to speak. That's how they would put it, actually. You hear these leading transhumanists, and they talk of themselves as achieving godhood status. It's creepy. Anyway, where was I? And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall come the end. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him. So it's not like right now. I said before, Jesus does seem to indicate that you should run when you see that happen. Um, Let him run to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved. But for the earth, for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. There's not going to be some guy on a street corner saying that I'm Christ. It's going to be convincing. It's going to be somebody um, performing miracles that you can see before your very eyes, and it will be very, very deceiving. I'll maybe in another video we'll go over what that might look like. Okay, we'll go over it now. Just in passing, a lot of people think that this may be, when you look at popular culture, they're starting to see this idea of panspermia, meaning alien seeding. So we are actually a product of aliens, and one thing I could see that would really be something that could deceive even the elect, if that were possible, as it says, is if we see an alien figure, or I don't know, through a spaceship or something that's televised nationally, come out and say, "We are your progenitors," and take a position in the holy place, as it says, and perform miracles, and that would be everyone's justification for what, when they start saying, "Well, see, there is no God. This is the truth of the matter, is you come from us." Obviously, the logical question would be like, okay, well, where did you come from? But nobody's going to ask that. They'll be too blown away. And I think uh, whether or not that occurs, this is just some speculation on the part of some people that I tend to follow. And you look at the Vatican. The Vatican has invested heavily in observing um, stuff going on in space, and has written articles about how to respond to aliens should we ever have contact with them. So there is some kind of disclosure. There's some conditioning happening that this isn't just random speculation. It is based on some things that are going on in the world. But anyway, no, just because if you were to learn right now that there are aliens everywhere, and they're saying, "Yep, we created you," and they're doing some miraculous things, healing people with their minds or whatever the hell they do, that doesn't mean that there's no God. But a lot of people uh, would be swayed by that if that was the case. Anyway, that's maybe a possibility. So wherefore, if they shall say, and I mentioned that too, because of all this stuff you're seeing more and more coming from the Pentagon. Oh, there's aliens. Now our government is outright admitting it and saying there are aliens, which is strange to me that it's getting so blown off. It's not receiving a lot of attention, but that's what they're saying. So is something going to come of this? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. So basically, look, when I come back, you're going to know it. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. That's going to freak some people out. And the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Okay, so if somebody says, oh, the Messiah came, that guy over there who's healing, and they might be doing something as crazy as bringing the dead back to life. Um, that doesn't mean it's Jesus. Remember what has to happen first. The sun is going to be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. It's going to be a lot of freaky stuff. Um, so if that doesn't happen first, then it's not Jesus. Now, if we proceed further here, well, I don't see a need to. It does say, as the days of Noah were, so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man. And some people interpret that to mean that as the days of Noah, when this was back when there were Nephilim, the progeny of human women and angelic beings ravaging the world. Uh, Essentially, these giant Nephilim creatures, and people interpret it that way. But another way to look at that would be uh, back then the the spiritual agenda was to eradicate the human genome by breeding out humanity, corrupting it with this fallen angel seed. And back in Genesis, God said, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers." And that could be regarded as a statement regarding a statement of genetics, as L.A. Marzulli would say. It's a seed war. Um, so now, if you're looking at the days of Noah as a time where there was the genetic corruption of mankind, such that it almost succeeded, except for Noah was pure in his generations, which could mean that he was pure in his genealogy. His blood was still pure; it was still human. Maybe it could mean that in the days of Noah, there's going to be genetic corruption. Well, with the advent of CRISPR gene editing software and what we're coming up against now with these crazy advances in transhumanist ideals and transhumanist technology, we might be looking at genetic aberrations as in the days of Noah. We might be encountering things like that. In fact, I would find it unlikely that that would not be the case in consideration of the fact that just recently we kind of got rid of there used to be the Human Animal uh, Hybrid Prohibition Act of 2009. That's done away with. Now having human animal hybrids is okay. That was passed like 2 Tuesdays ago or something like that. A recent development. So I don't know. Maybe we got some freaky sci-fi stuff coming. Well, it makes sense if you look into Revelation. I think is where it says men's hearts will fail them for fear of what's coming upon the earth. That's got to be pretty scary to have a heart attack. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be like human, animal, goblins. It's What I do know is that truth is stranger than fiction, and a lot of this sounds very far fetched, but we know so little, and we know so little about the distant past as well. I would recommend, they got rid of his YouTube a while back, but now he's back. Timothy Alberino, he wrote The Birthright, good book. Um, he started doing a series on that. I think he's got 3 out now, but you can find him on YouTube. Alberino Analysis, I believe, is the channel. Might be a good place to start looking at some things that I think are probably more relevant than what a lot of people would give it credit for. Anyway, I really want to talk about that a little bit because that is, it's like an unspoken, well, it's a spoken thing, but it's also an unspoken thing. Like, my spirit tells me that something bad is coming and I need to flee. I need to, like, hightail it to the woods. A lot of people feel that way. So, worth talking about, worth looking at prepping and what scenarios might we encounter and what things do we have to have in place to ensure or increase your chances of survival. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be, like I said, it's not going to take a Navy SEAL. Homeless people do it all the time. Don't be discouraged by these know-it-all naysayers. Most of them have a background in stuff like this, and they want to be special. And so that makes them feel special. Like, I could do it, but you can't because I've got all. No, shut up. It's not rocket science. I understand there might be difficulties, but this is not new to history, really, either. There have been multiple times in history where people have had to flee and survive in the wilderness or wherever. Anyway, that's all I got.